All right, everybody, how you doing? I want to begin with some positive news and some hopeful news. And that is there's a new poll that just dropped on Donald Trump's job approval rating, and he is down to just 32%. This is according to a poll from the American Research Group. This is the lowest they have recorded Donald Trump. You got to look at each individual poll and compare it to past versions of each individual poll because they have different methodologies and all of that kind of crap. So, if you're going to look at the job approval in one poll, you have to compare it to the same poll done over time because that's why you get poll numbers all over the place. So, in terms of this poll, this is a low, I believe, for the American Research Group. 32% is pretty fucking bad. We are just a stone's throw away from the 20s. And I would not be surprised if he hits the 20s. That is not something I had anticipated, that Donald Trump would be this low at this point. I mean, what? He's been president for a year and a couple of months, and he's already this bad. You know, the only way you get to numbers like this is if Trump is losing part of his base, and he absolutely is. I've been chronicling this for months, and there's more and more evidence of this every single friggin' day. He is alienating his own base for any number of reasons: betrayal on the issues, attacking some of them personally to make examples of them. I've got an article here of Tucker Carlson now apologizing for endorsing Donald Trump, apologizing profusely for having been a part of electing Donald Trump. And he's not the only one. And Tucker Carlson is doing this because, one, he is become completely disillusioned with what Trump is doing. And also because Trump has attacked him personally and repeatedly over the last couple of weeks. Same thing with people like Alex Jones and Megyn Kelly and others. And that's, for people to say that Donald Trump is some sort of political genius, I know why he does this. I know why he attacks MAGA influencers like this, because this is a cult. We all know this is a cult, but yet you really have to accept it, that it's a cult. It's not a political party. A political party, they have things that they believe in that unites them. Most of these people don't believe in anything. The only thing that has served to unite the Trump coalition, and the Trump coalition is not a monolith. It's made up of a lot of disparate groups. Some of these groups actually have certain issues that animate them. Other parts of the coalition are just hate groups of various kinds. The overwhelming majority, I think, of the Trump coalition are just mindless drones who had been voting for Republicans for years. It's all just team sports. So, of course, they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And then because of the nature of Trump's celebrity and the nature of how Donald Trump has conducted himself and demanded blind loyalty, he sort of turned this whole party into a cult. And so it is a cult now. It doesn't operate like a political party. It operates like a personality cult. And when there's a personality cult, the cult leader cannot afford for people inside the cult to start questioning him. Now, people outside the cult can badmouth him all they want. It's not going to threaten his power inside the cult, because those people are outside the cult and people inside the cult don't give a damn what those people have to say. But if people inside the cult start questioning the leader or criticizing the leader, that can have an effect, because suddenly other people inside the cult might start questioning him. He can't have that. So anybody who even questions Trump from inside the cult needs to be destroyed, needs to be attacked, and made an example of as a deterrent for anyone else inside the cult even thinking about speaking out. Don't you dare even think about criticizing me, or I will go after you the way I did Marjorie Taylor Greene, the way I did Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and all these people. Now, on the one hand, I get it. I understand why he does it, to keep control over the cult. But on the other hand, these are big-time influencers inside the cult. And from that perspective, it's profoundly stupid. Because people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and all of these kinds of people, they talk to their audiences on a daily basis and have been, for many of them, for many years. And for some of them, long before Donald Trump ever came along. And so a lot of these audiences have a deep bond with these influencers. And they're not all just going to abandon those people just because Trump has turned on them. In fact, it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to be one of those things that causes a further rift between Trump and the people in his base. And we've seen that, and it's happening, and it's reflected in the numbers. You don't get to 32% and lower, and I believe he is heading lower. You don't get to numbers like that without losing support from within. And that's been happening. And it's going to continue to happen. And I bet he's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the 20s before the midterms. And just wait until we get closer to the midterms. You know, we're a little bit more than 6 months out right now. I don't know if we're going to see these Republicans start to speak out more as we get closer to the election. I mean, they're hoping. I know so many of them. They are hoping and praying that this thing turns around, that this war in Iran ends soon, that the price of gas begins to fall, that the price of groceries and every damn thing else begins to fall. They're just hoping that they're in a better position by November than they are now. But if they are not, and they very well may not be, what then will they do? Will they start to turn on him to save themselves? Because at some point, I mean, they know this, but they're trying to kick the can down the road. They know that they have to try to separate themselves from Donald Trump. Honestly, that's an almost impossible task at this point in time. I mean, Republicans are synonymous with Donald Trump. There has been no distance between Republicans and Donald Trump. They have enabled him at every turn. So I don't know how, in the final few months of the campaign, that they think they're going to try to put some distance between themselves and Trump. But at some point, they're going to realize that that's the only chance that many of them have of holding on to their positions, because Donald Trump is bringing them all down. So we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't expect it to happen yet, because I know what they're doing. They're just hoping it gets better so that they don't ever have to try to distance themselves from Trump, that they don't ever have to try to criticize Trump. They're all deathly afraid of doing that. And if they ever do, they're going to wait until the last possible moment to do it. So I wouldn't expect them to do it 6 months out, maybe 2 months out. I don't know. I don't know what the time frame would be. And many of them never will. Many of them, let's face it, are in safe Trump humper districts. So those people never have to turn on Trump. And so they won't. In fact, it would be against their own best interest to turn on Trump. They'll be safely reelected. And if they try to turn on Trump, even if they hate Trump's guts, and many of them do, and many of these Trump humpers that you see in the Republican caucus who go out on TV and kiss Trump's ass, many of them actually fucking hate him. But they can't say that. And if they're in a safe Trump humper district, they're going to be safely reelected so long as they kiss Trump's ass. And so they never will turn on him. But a lot of them, I mean, if they are in a district that Trump won by like 10 points or less, they're in deep shit. And because Trump has lost so much support, that even if you're in a district that Trump won by 10 points and you're a Republican, you are not safe anymore. You could go down in a Trump plus 10 district. And so those people whose seats are really in jeopardy, at some point, they're going to have to make a decision. Either I criticize him to try to win re-election, and I don't know that that's going to work anyway. As I said, you have been defending him for a decade. 2 months before the election, suddenly you find a few things to lightly criticize him about. I don't think that's going to work. But they're going to be faced with the decision. Either I try to create distance between me and Trump to try to win re-election, or I just say, fuck it. I guess I'll just go down with the ship because I'm too much of a coward to speak out on this guy. And it's better to go down kissing his ass, because at least then you don't risk the fury of the cult. Anyway, we'll see as we get closer what they do there. But I want to segue here into impeachment and removal. Now, I don't expect that there's any shot of that happening before the midterms. Although, who knows? I mean, at the rate that this demented old buffoon is fucking everything up, who the hell knows? 25th Amendment is out there. You guys know what I think about the 25th Amendment. Not that the 25th Amendment is not appropriate. It certainly is. Donald Trump is out of his fucking mind. He's batshit crazy. He has no business, for reasons of his mental illness, being anywhere near the reins of power. So if J.D. Vance and a majority of the cabinet, or a majority of another body that's created by Congress for this purpose under the 25th Amendment, vote to strip him of his authority as president, I mean, I'm fine with that. But you know my position on this. If you have enough votes to do that, because it wouldn't just be that, right? Because Trump would contest it. And under the 25th Amendment, if the VP and a majority of the cabinet vote to strip him of his authority and so notify Congress, well, Trump could contest that. He can send his own letter to Congress saying, that's bullshit, I'm fine. I'm not giving up my power. In which case, then Congress has to decide. And in order to uphold the finding of the vice president and the majority of the cabinet, or whatever other body Congress designates for this, you need 2/3 of the House and the Senate. So really, it's not just the vice president and the cabinet. You need 2/3 of both houses of Congress to strip the president of his authority against his will. And again, as I've said many times, it doesn't actually remove him from office. He would still be president. He would just be temporarily stripped of his authority. By the way, I was reading an article yesterday, I think, and it was talking about how more and more Republicans are talking about the 25th Amendment. Now, you're not really hearing elected Republicans talk about this. What you're hearing is people who said, I'm fucking done with Trump. Former MAGAs who have turned on Trump. And that's a growing number of people. Because once they turn on Trump, they're no longer part of the cult. And I'm telling you, boy, I've said this many times. When you're part of a cult and you wake up and you realize that it was all bullshit, that the guy was conning you, that it was all based on a bunch of lies, as these people are beginning to realize, it's not that you just don't support him as much anymore. No, you fucking hate him. You realize that he's been lying to you for a decade. You realize that it's all been a con and he took advantage of you. And then you start to think, look at all the things in my life that I did in service of this fucking liar. I got into fights with friends and families and members of my family. I've lost friends because I defended this criminal piece of shit, this liar, this fraud. I've lost friends, lifelong friends over this. I don't have a relationship with members of my family anymore. I'm not invited to Thanksgiving anymore because I fight with everybody, or I fought with everybody to defend Donald Trump. I mean, think about the things that these people have gone through over a decade. And now they're starting to realize it was all for a lie. It was a con. And how many of them, and I love this, how many of them parted with so much of their own hard-earned money for this guy? How much money did they give in response to his unrelenting calls for money? I mean, these fucking MAGAs, they get multiple texts and emails soliciting money from them every single day. And it's always the end of the world, right? Oh, if you don't donate money right now, they're going to impeach and remove Trump. If you don't send money right now, the radical left Democrats are going to take over everything. All this kind of shit every day for a decade. How much have they given to this guy? How much of his cheap crap merchandise have they bought? How much money have they spent on bumper stickers and flags and their stupid fucking hats? And on and on and on. By the way, I wonder if any of those idiots got their Trump phones yet. You know what I'm talking about here? You know, Trump's big thing is licensing deals. This goes back to before the presidency. He make tons of money just slapping his name on shit. He doesn't make anything. Think of all the products. Trump water, Trump wines. I think he might actually own some vineyards. He might actually produce some wine. But steaks, you think Trump's got a fucking cattle ranch somewhere? No. Trump steaks, Trump's water, Trump phones, Trump watches, Trump shoes. You think he's in the shoe manufacturing business? You think he makes watches? You think he makes cell phones? No. He just has licensing deals with some friggin' company that makes phones or makes watches, cheap crap phones and cheap crap watches and cheap crap shoes, mostly made in China. He has licensing deals with them. They pay him a shit ton of money to slap his stupid name on their product. That's what it is. And one of these was a Trump phone. And it was like a wireless, carrier, and they sold phones. And these people spent, I don't know, $600 on a phone, whatever it was, months and months and months and months ago. And they're just waiting and waiting, never got their phones. The last article I read, I don't know, like a month ago or something, they still haven't got their phones. So I love that for them. How many of those people, are turning on Trump? I don't know. But my point is, once they realize that it was all a bunch of lies, they start realizing, they get angry because they were deceived by this guy. And it's, as I said, it's not just that they don't support him as much anymore. Oh, I used to really support Trump and now I don't really support him that much anymore. No, I was a full-on Trump cultist. I believed every fucking word. I went to all the rallies and now I realize it was all a fraud. He's been lying to me for a decade. He's played me for a fool. Those people are angry, right? Those people are angry. Anyway, so I read an article about them, about Republicans like that, talking more and more about the 25th Amendment. Because the thing is, they all know he's batshit crazy. They've all known this. They just will never admit it, right? If for no other reason, then they can't let the libs be right about Trump. And libs to them is anyone who doesn't support Donald Trump. So you could be a lifelong conservative Republican who just didn't go along with Donald Trump because he's not a conservative. And so you're like, fuck this. I'm an actual conservative. Trump is not. I don't support him anymore. Well, you're a lib too. So you're a lib to these people if you don't support Trump, period. Where was I going with this? Anyway, so the 25th Amendment, more and more of, so these people, if for no other reason, then they can't let the libs be right. They have never admitted the truth about Trump, even though a lot of them know the truth. They know he's a fucking idiot, right? Many of them, not all of them. I mean, if you're in the cult, you're in the cult. I mean, you believe it, probably, most of them. But I'm sure for a lot of his supporters, they know it's bullshit. How can you not listen to this guy and realize he's an idiot? I mean, I don't understand this. I've never understood it. How any of these people can think he's smart. You listen to him for 2 seconds and you realize this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know basic English. He uses the wrong words. He mispronounces words. Remember when he tried to pronounce acetaminophen? I mean, the guy can't speak. He's an idiot. Anyway, the point is, a lot of them know some of this, right? They know the truth about him to some degree, many of them. And now that they're realizing that it was all a fraud, now they are finally willing to admit that which is clear, that should be clear as day to everybody. He's an idiot. He's a liar. He's a fraud. Another thing, and so they're talking more about the 25th Amendment now because they know he's batshit crazy. And once they turn, they're angry. They've really turned, and they want him gone. They want this son of a bitch who's been lying to them for a decade. They want him gone. They would much rather go into the midterms and go into 2028 with J.D. Vance as president, even though they're not that fucking crazy about him either. And let's be honest, who could be? So now that they're turning, they're starting to admit some of this stuff. And they know he's batshit crazy, and they hate him, and they're talking about the 25th Amendment. And so you know my opinion about that. But I want to talk a little bit more about impeachment and removal, because right before I came on here to another video I posted, someone replied, "It takes 2/3 of the Senate and we'll never have that many Democrats. So removing Trump is impossible. It can never happen." I don't subscribe to that at all. I could not possibly disagree with that more strongly. I don't accept it. I don't know where people get that from. Why do you think? So you need 67 votes in the Senate. Yet people seem to think the only way that that's going to happen, that Trump could actually be removed. I mean, you only need a simple majority to impeach him in the House. Democrats are very, very likely to have that come January, and they're probably going to have a nice, comfortable margin, maybe like by a couple dozen seats or more. So impeaching him in the House should be no problem. But that's only step one of a two-part system, a two-step process. And by the way, anyone who is from another country listening to this, because I get a lot of questions from people in other countries who don't understand, hey, I thought he was impeached twice. Why is he still there? Because impeachment is a two-step process. If he gets simple majority impeachment vote in the House, he's impeached. But he isn't removed from office unless you convict him on those impeachment charges in the Senate. So never in American history has a president been convicted in a Senate impeachment trial. But anyway, so you need 67 votes to convict in the Senate. I don't know why people believe that that is impossible unless you have 67 Democrats in the Senate. It's simply not so. I mean, the idea is that no Republican would ever vote to convict Trump in a Senate impeachment trial. I literally don't understand how people say that, given the fact that in his last impeachment, there were 7 Republicans who voted to convict him in the Senate. So this idea that no Republican would ever vote to convict Trump in a Senate impeachment trial, I think is just fucking bullshit on its face. We already know that that's not true. 7 of them voted to convict him last time. And consider this. That was right after January 6th. That was right after Donald Trump sicked a violent mob that he summoned to Washington, an armed mob, and he knew they were armed, many of them, and directed them to Congress to commit violence. They wanted to hang Mike Pence, and that's important. And I believe they would have if they ever got his hands on him. He probably wouldn't have been hanged. I mean, that gallows that they constructed, it was symbolic. It probably couldn't hold a watermelon. So it wouldn't have actually worked. What would have happened if they got their hands on Mike Pence is the mob would have just beat him to death. That's what would have happened. Or any other members of Congress that they had gotten their hands on that they didn't identify as one of them, they would have just beaten them to death. But the one that they really were going after was Mike Pence. And remember, that crowd turned violent when Trump tweeted out that Mike Pence didn't have the strength to do what needed to be done, whatever the hell he wrote, when it was clear that Mike Pence did not vote to throw out electoral votes, which he had no authority to do anyway. And that whole scheme never even would have worked. Even if Mike Pence did what Trump wanted him to do, It never would have worked anyway. Trump was never going to win no matter what Mike Pence did. That's why I am not one of these people who ever praises Mike Pence. Oh, well, I don't like Mike Pence, but at least he did what needed to be done. Thank goodness, or else Donald Trump would have stolen the election. No, even if Mike Pence did what he wanted, it never would have worked. Never would have worked. Anyway, and I could talk about that more later, but the point I'm making here is they only turned violent once Mike Pence did not reject electoral votes and Trump tweeted that out. That's when they turned violent. That's when they really stormed the Capitol. And that's when they started with the hang Mike Pence, because they viewed Mike Pence as a traitor. Now, that second impeachment came just a few weeks after that Senate impeachment trial. A few weeks after that violent mob of Trump cultists literally were chanting, hang Mike Pence, the Republican vice president of the United States. And if they got him, they would have beaten him to death. I have no doubt about that. And you know who else has no doubt about that? Republican senators. And yet, given the fact that they knew they could be branded as traitors by Trump's cult, nevertheless, just weeks after January 6th, 7 of them voted to convict him. 7 Republicans. And so the idea that in 2027, if he is impeached by the House of Representatives in 2027, and I think 2027 is going to be a very bad year for Donald Trump. But if they can impeach him in the House and it goes over to a Senate impeachment trial, you don't think any Republicans would vote to convict him? Now, I don't know what would happen, but I just think that the idea of giving up on it, just throwing your hands up in defeat, it'll never happen, no Republican will ever vote to convict Trump, that's bullshit. That's not necessarily true. And just think about this. We will be talking about 2027, months after Republicans just got their asses kicked in the midterm elections, if that's what happens. And let's hope that's what happens. And Democrats may even be in the majority in the Senate at that time. There's more and more polling data coming out showing that Democrats have a real chance now at taking back this. God damn it, that didn't work. Have a real chance. Oh, it's all smudged. Have a real chance of taking the Senate. And so they might have a majority in the Senate. Anyway, if that's what happens, if this is a blue wave election as it appears to be shaping up to be, and I'm telling you, believe me when I tell you, most Republicans in Congress, even the public Trump ass kissers, hate his guts. Look at what Trump has done to them. He controls them. He tells them what to do, and they feel they have to do it. He treats them like shit. Yeah, they're members of Congress. They got elected, and they have no power because Trump bullies them, and he controls this cult. They don't do anything. They don't do anything. They don't have a voice. They're nothing. He mocks them. He treats them like shit. He goes around them completely. And they are all facing the possibility of getting wiped out. Why? Because of Donald Trump. They don't support all this. Most Republicans in Congress don't want to be in this Iran war. Trump has dragged them all into war, and they can't speak out against it. They hate him. They fucking hate him. So you start with the fact that most Republicans in Congress hate him. Now, if we're in 2027 and Republicans just got their asses kicked, they know the reason they got their asses kicked. Donald Trump, who they already hate, is the reason why they're in the minority now, if that's what happens. If they're in the minority in 2027, every damn one of them will know it's because of Donald Trump. And not only that, Donald Trump will be such a lame fucking duck at that point. The next election is 2028. And also keep in mind that virtually the day after the midterms, the presidential election starts. And there will be Republicans running for the Republican nomination for president, looking to be, to take over as leader of the party. The party is going to be looking to the future. Trump will no longer be the future. That is the main reason everything, or one of the main reasons, this is different than any other time in the last 10 years. Because I got to tell you, I'm so fucking sick of the pessimists. Oh, Donald Trump will never leave. They'll never turn on Trump. Things are dynamic. Things change. And the situation now is completely different than it's ever been before. Donald Trump was always their future. In 2016, he was their candidate. They supported him. Throughout his first term, he was their future. He was going to be running for re-election. They had to support him. After he lost, he announced to run again, to run for re-election virtually the day after he lost. Right from the beginning. So he was their candidate again. And they reflexively defended him from, attacks about January 6th, investigations, indictments, which brought them all to his side, if only to defend him. So he was their future. He was their candidate again. He will never be their candidate ever again. He is no longer the party's future. This is the first time that has ever been the case. Trump has always been their future. They had to protect Trump to preserve their future. Now, not only is Donald Trump not their future and never will be again, Donald Trump is destroying their future. They can read the fucking polls. He's at 32% in this latest poll. They see the polls talking about their chances of keeping control of Congress. They see that they're looking at a blue wave. They know what's coming down the pike, and they know it's all because of Donald Trump. And more voters on the Republican side are waking up to this too. So if we fast forward to 2027, if Republicans are in the minority, just got their asses handed to them because of Donald Trump is destroying the future of their party, and they all fucking hate his ass anyway, you don't think it's possible that any Republicans in the Senate will vote to convict his criminal ass in a Senate impeachment trial? I don't know why you would believe that, especially, as I said, since 7 Republicans voted to convict him last time. And all the political pressures this time will be in the opposite direction. There will be many more reasons for Republicans. It's all a political calculation. Whether or not they're going to vote to convict him, it has nothing to do with the law. It's all about politics. And so they all make political calculations. And many of them may very well conclude that it's in their political best interest and the party's best interest to convict and remove him from office now. And it would be. They'll be having conversations like this. We all know he's a criminal piece of shit and deserves to be removed from office. They all know that. They all know it. And most of them hate him and said they would love to see that happen. The only question has to do with their personal future and the future of their party. And they're going to be having conversations like this. They'll be saying, sure would be better going into the 2028 elections with Donald Trump no longer the head of our party, with Donald Trump no longer in the White House, tweeting out batshit crazy shit every day, getting us involved in wars or whatever the hell he's doing. Because you think he's crazy now? Wait until the final 2 years of his term, because the other dynamic that's going to be going on is the party will be moving on from him necessarily. As I said, the presidential election will begin right after the midterms. And this is the first time in the Republican Party since Donald Trump came on the scene that he has not been the center of attention. The center of attention is going to shift to these Republican candidates. And Trump won't be able to deal with that. That's going to drive him fucking crazy. And he's going to be trying to sabotage those Republican candidates or I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what things are like, because Donald Trump is going to have 2 very different pressures inside him that are going to be motivating him. And I don't know which is going to win. On the one hand, and Anthony Scaramucci has talked about this, on the one hand, he doesn't care about the Republican Party, right? We all know this. He doesn't give a shit about issues. He doesn't care about the party. What he will want is for the Republican Party to implode without him. He would love for the Republican nominee to lose in 2028 so that he could see, the party can't win without me. They only won because of me. So he would love to see the Republican Party completely collapse when he's no longer the head of it. And he would not want to see whoever it is who the party chooses as the successor, whoever they nominate as president. He doesn't want that person to win, because if he's president, then he's going to be the center of attention for at least the next 4 years. At least if that person loses, that person's a loser. That person's going to have no juice anymore. Donald Trump can continue to be the center of attention, or he can reassert himself and grab the attention for the next 4 years. So it would, for his own ego and narcissism, it would be in his best interest for the Republican nominee in 2028 to lose. So he might want to sabotage that person. However, if there's not a Republican, if there's a Democrat in office in come 2029 as president, then Donald Trump could be prosecuted. Unless Trump tries to pardon himself. But the problem there is, if anyone has the balls to tell him, is that a self-pardon is not guaranteed to work. Most constitutional experts will tell you, and I completely agree with this, that self-pardons by presidents are not legal, not constitutional. So he could try to pardon himself, but it's not a guarantee that he won't be prosecuted. He could still be prosecuted, and the courts could find that he has no immunity. The only way to really guarantee that he isn't prosecuted is to get a Republican president to succeed him, one that would try to protect him. And that's not a guarantee either, depending on who it is. But anyway, so on the one hand, he would love for the Republican Party to lose in 2028, the Republican nominee for president to lose, so that he could say, see, this party's nothing without me, and he gets to remain the center of attention on the Republican side. But if he wants to stay out of prison, the best thing there is for a Republican to win. So who knows how he's going to come down on this. But he's going to be going through some things. As batshit crazy as he is now, it's going to get even worse in after the midterms. Everything's going to change after the midterms. And so going back to my point, you're going to have an increasingly old, unhinged, demented, criminal buffoon as the head of their party, still president. Or they could say, you know what? We can get rid of this guy. We know he deserves to be convicted in a Senate impeachment trial and removed from office. And if we do that, we'll have 2 years of distance between Trump in the White House and the next election, or close to 2 years. And we could go into 2028 with President Vance at the top of the ticket, rather than some new person that this demented old buffoon might be trying to sabotage, and Trump will be destroying our chances every single day he's in the White House, commanding the attention and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So the point is, wrapping this up, I think I don't really have patience for people. I mean, are we in a fight or not? And I'm sick of people like quitting in advance. Oh, we can never remove him from office. We're never going to have 67 Democrats. You don't need 67 Democrats. There will be Republicans who may very well vote to convict him in a third Senate impeachment trial, or as many as it takes. As I've said before, what I think Democrats should do if they take the majority is, there are so many impeachable offenses. There are so many crimes he's committed. So many impeachable offenses. Don't put them all in one impeachment. Do it one at a time, because then you only get one bite at the apple. Take one article of impeachment, vote on that, send that over to the Senate, have a Senate impeachment trial. If that fails to remove him, then queue up the next impeachable offense, impeach his ass again, and send it over for another impeachment trial. If that fails, do it again. We need a conveyor belt of impeachments until one of them is successful in removing him from office. And at the bare minimum, you got 2 years of tying this guy up in impeachment trials. I mean, in Congress, if Donald Trump is president, you're not going to get anything done anyway. You're not going to, any legislation you're going to get passed, he's just going to veto anyway. So why waste your time passing bills that he's just going to veto? Much better to spend your time impeaching his ass on charge after charge after charge. Now, before I started here, I was looking at some of these questions. Someone asked this. Hello, my question. How hard is it to prosecute insider trading / market manipulation? That's a good question because we know it's happening. We know that Donald Trump, one of the many things he's doing in this illegal war of his, is cashing in for him and his billionaire buddies big time in manipulating the market and insider trading. So that is a good question. When we look ahead to possible criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump and his people, how hard is it to prosecute insider trading and market manipulation? I want to take those two differently. I'm not going to go through all the elements and do an actual, in the weeds, how legally you would prosecute. Let's just keep it generally speaking. So market manipulation would be more difficult as to Trump. Now, the things that he is doing, the things that he is saying, that we all know are designed to manipulate the market. He's clearly doing it. He's clearly guilty, I would imagine. It seems to me, let me put it that way. It seems to me, in my humble opinion, he is guilty of market manipulation. However, we have that Supreme Court decision on immunity hanging out there. Now, as I've explained many times, contrary to what appears to be popular misunderstanding about that Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court did not give the president absolute immunity. It gave him qualified immunity. Well, it gave him absolute immunity for what are determined to be core constitutional functions. Everything else that a president does as president, official acts of the president, do not get absolute immunity. They get presumptive immunity, which means a prosecutor can overcome that presumption. And they explain that all you need to do to overcome the presumption of immunity is to demonstrate to the court how prosecuting this president for this particular crime will not prohibit future hamper future presidents from being able to effectively do their jobs. That's it. That's what the decision was aimed at. If we allow presidents to be prosecuted for official acts, it will hamstring future presidents from being able to do their job because they'll be constantly worried about being prosecuted. On the other hand, they didn't want to give absolute immunity for everything that a president does, so they gave presumptive immunity. So that's all you got to do is show that prosecuting him for this will not prevent future presidents from doing their jobs. That's it. And so for most official acts of the president, he can still be prosecuted. And then, of course, for things that are neither core constitutional functions of the president or official acts at all and are just purely personal acts, there's no immunity whatsoever. It doesn't matter that he was president when he did those things. If they were personal acts, no immunity at all. So we're looking towards the possibility of prosecuting Trump for any number of his many, many crimes. The problem with market manipulation is, what would you look to as evidence of the market manipulation? Well, it would have been things that he said, things that he tweeted, or truth bleated, or whatever the fuck you call those things. Things that he said designed to manipulate the markets. And maybe even things that he did in terms of the war. The problem there is that the court would likely find those to be core constitutional functions. He was saying things as president, communicating to the American people as president. It's hard to say that just saying things about a war that he is commander-in-chief of the military in a time of war, to use words that the president said. I don't know. It seems to me very difficult to believe that the Supreme Court is going to allow the president to be prosecuted for market manipulation based on things he said about a war in the middle of the war and about negotiations. I mean, he's commander-in-chief of the military. He is the head of state conducting foreign policy. core constitutional functions, I can't imagine that the Supreme Court would allow that to be the basis of a prosecution. So that's going to be tough. Insider trading, however, is different. What would be insider trading? Well, passing along information that is not publicly available that people could then use to trade and make money in the markets, right? Being privy to information. If Trump says, hey, to his buddies, hey, I'm going to make this announcement. It's going to happen on Thursday. So there, make your trades based on that. And of course, Trump is getting a taste of all this. He's not doing this just to enrich his buddies. He's doing this to enrich himself. So anyway, insider trading, if he's saying that, that's not an official act of the president. Private communications, tipping people off, those aren't public statements of the president. Those aren't statements made as a head of state conducting foreign policy. Those aren't things being said by the commander-in-chief of the military at time of war. So insider trading, oh, absolutely. I think that's purely personal. I don't think he'd have any problem whatsoever with the court's immunity decision there. So yeah, definitely possible to prosecute him. Maybe not market manipulation. I'm not saying it's impossible. Depends what facts you uncover, but I can't. That would be tough. That'd be tough. But insider trading, absolutely. But there's so many other crimes. Think of all the acts of bribery in which he has engaged, right? We know about the planes. We know about foreign governments pumping money into his various businesses and his crypto schemes and all of that shit. We know about these shakedowns, filing frivolous lawsuits against media companies, and then they settle when there's no reason for them to have settled. Completely frivolous lawsuits that there's no way they would have lost. They would have gotten thrown right out of court, never would have survived summary judgment, and yet they settle. Why? We all know why. They're bribes. This is a way of bribing the president or Trump extorting these places and them bribing him under the guise of a legal settlement. Just because you funnel a bribe through a legal settlement doesn't mean it's not a bribe. If everybody knows that this is the purpose of this settlement, of this frivolous lawsuit, that could still form the basis of bribery charges. And there's no way that any act of bribery can be considered an official act of the president entitled to any form of immunity. How do we know this? Well, because the Constitution itself lists bribery as one of the two crimes that a president can be impeached and removed for. Treason, bribery, and other high crimes are misdemeanors. So it's specifically there. Bribery is not an official act of the president if he could be removed from office for having engaged in it. So absolutely, think of all the acts of bribery just that we know about. Imagine all the acts of bribery that we have no idea about. And see, that's the thing. Trump's criminality, it's like an iceberg. We only know about the very little part of it sticking out of the water. I'm sure that the vast majority of his crimes and impeachable offenses, we don't have any idea about. This is why Donald Trump is scared to death about the midterms. By the way, earlier today, I played a clip of him calling into some show. In Virginia, they're having a vote today on a constitutional amendment to allow that state to redraw their congressional maps in advance of the midterm elections. In response to Trump ordering these red states to do that, Democrats have been fighting back, as you know. And today, Virginia is going to vote on this. If it passes, they're going to redraw their congressional maps, and that would likely hand Democrats at least a few more seats in Virginia. So it's really important, if you live in Virginia, get out and vote in favor of that. Even if you're not in support, as a general rule, of these partisan gerrymandering, still go out and vote for it. This is not a permanent. I believe that this change to the Constitution, it reverts. This is only for like this election cycle or this one in 2028. It's not a permanent change. But the truth of the matter is, if you disarm, if only one side is going to play by the rules and the other side is going to redraw their congressional maps whenever they think it serves their purpose, If one side is fighting dirty and the other side's playing by the rules, the side that fights dirty is going to win every time, or they're going to have an advantage. All right. I don't even, if the blue wave materializes the way it seems to be, there's no amount of redistricting that's going to save Republicans, at least in the House. And of course, redistricting only applies to the House because senators are, elected statewide. Anyway, you can't unilaterally disarm. If we want to go back, or if we want to, go back, we've never really had that. We've always had partisan gerrymandering, and it's only gotten worse and worse and worse. But if we want to get to a place where we move towards a nonpartisan commission or something, drawing these congressional districts in a less partisan, nonpartisan, hopefully way, the only way we're going to ever get there is to beat back these fascist Republicans, because they will never agree to anything like that. So we have to vanquish these fucking people and then make reforms. That's the only way you're going to get this stuff. So if you stand on your high horse going, oh, well, I don't like partisan gerrymandering. Okay, well, then you're just empowering Republicans. Anyway, how long have I been going here? Okay, let me see if I've got any questions. And by the way, as is usually the case, I am recording this right now as a live stream on one of my YouTube channels, but you may be listening to this, watching this at a later date on any number of platforms, Spotify, other places. So just so you know, I'm reading questions from YouTube here. Can you imagine going through a state funeral for Trump? Ugh. I don't think Donald Trump should be given a state funeral. Fuck him. I think he should be rolled up in a cheap carpet and dumped in a fucking landfill. When Donald Trump passes, and I'm just talking about when he passes, I'm not, suggesting anything other than that. But when he passes, that's how he should be treated. He is not deserving of a state funeral. And he's not entitled to one either. I've looked into this. There is no law that makes presidents automatically entitled to a state funeral. Fuck him. Or alternatively, if you don't want to roll him up in a cheap carpet and dump him in a landfill, another suggestion is, I've often thought about this. We have this massive national debt. I think it's about almost $40 trillion now. The biggest portion of that was accumulated during the Trump years, as we all know. Again, I talked about earlier how Trump is no conservative. Give me a break. Fucking conservative. He's the biggest debt spending president in American history by far. In what way is he a conservative? I'm so sick of Trump and these Republicans being described as conservatives. When did Democrat become synonymous with liberal or progressive, and Republican became synonymous with conservative? That's bullshit. In a lot of ways, today's Democrats are more traditionally conservative than this group of fascist Republicans. Which is the party? I'm not saying that either party is great on debt spending, but which party approaches debt spending and the budget in a more responsible manner? Clearly Democrats right now. That is the Democrats on the budget and spending have a more conservative position than Republicans. So why the hell do we continually just give the label conservative to Republicans? Republican and conservative aren't the same fucking thing. Republican is a party. Conservative is tied to a governing philosophy. Well, guess what? Parties change over time. And just because the Republican Party may once have been a conservative party doesn't mean it is forever thereafter a conservative party. It clearly is not. It's a big government fascist personality cult. It is in no way a conservative governing party. I'm just fucking sick of that. Every time I see it in the media, every time I hear some talking head on TV just call Donald Trump a conservative or Republicans conservatives, it pisses me off. They are no fucking such thing. Anyway, back to my idea on the debt. So we got an almost $40 trillion national debt. Imagine if we can all pay $10 to piss on this fucker's grave. How fast would we pay off the national debt? You know, if it were me, I'd be saving up every month to piss on his grave as many times as possible. I'm just saying. And, you know, imagine if we did that. Instead of shoving his fat, bloated body in a landfill, we bury him somewhere publicly, and we charge people to come and piss on his grave. How many times would you pay to piss on his grave? You know, it would probably be the number one family vacation in America for the next 20 years. Taking a family road trip to go piss on this fucker's grave. And think about the international, grave pissing tourism industry that would sprout up in this country. We would bring in tons of money. And think of all the ancillary businesses that would go along with it. All the hotels and the restaurants, all those things. Imagine the boost to the economy that would create. I'm not even kidding. I think it's a damn good idea. I think whoever the nominee for the Democratic nominee for president should run on that, because I think it's a winner. Okay. Now, I printed out several stories that I wanted to discuss on today's show, and I didn't get to a single one. We've been going at this for almost an hour, and I didn't discuss one of these. So let me just get through some of these real quick. Well, let me actually, you know what? Let me check the news. I've been talking here for an hour. Trump approval, 32%, matching Jimmy Carter's lows. Telling you, this guy, he's going to the 20s. He's going to the 20s. Okay, I don't see anything new having broken. Here's an article. King Charles despises Trump. Well, that's good to know. I figured that would have been the case. Okay, let me see. Any questions here? Scanning. Okay. I would come to the USA to do that, as would most Brits. See, that's what I'm saying. Now, think of what Donald Trump has done to tourism, international tourism to the United States, how he has absolutely killed it. I don't know how many articles I've read over the last year of, tourist spots, their businesses have dried up. I was reading specifically about someplace in Maine that had a lot of tourism from Canada, has all but dried up. The Canadians aren't coming down here. People from other parts of the world aren't coming here. Why would you? You want to run the risk of getting kidnapped by some masked ICE thug and held without due process just because the color of your skin or whatever? No, you'd be out of your damn mind to come to this country. So the tourism industry has really been dealt a significant blow under this guy. This would revive it. Trump destroyed it. Let Trump's demise build it back up. And I think it could be built up better than ever. Anyway, okay. Let me see what I have here in no particular order from my stack. Here's one. FBI Director Kash Patel sues The Atlantic for $250 million over a story on alleged drinking and absences. Let me just read a little of this. I'm sure most of you are aware of this. FBI Director Kash Patel filed a defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic magazine on Monday, saying a recent story about his alleged frequent drinking and absences included false and obviously fabricated claims. The 19-page lawsuit filed in the District of Columbia is seeking $250 million in damages. Sarah Fitzpatrick, the reporter who wrote the story, is also named as a defendant. Blah, blah, blah. One of the lawyers said, Patel lawyers, each of the foregoing statements and implications is false. I guess this is part of the lawsuit. They are so demonstrably and obviously false or easily refuted that it was at best reckless to publish them. Now, The standard under Supreme Court precedent, since Kash Patel is a public figure is actual malice. So you need to know that the statements you're publishing are fictitious, are false, are lies, or you didn't give a shit whether they were true or not, essentially. And you published them anyway, and they were harmful to the plaintiff's character. Now, the problem with this for Kash Patel is we have lots of videos and pictures of his drunk ass in public. Okay? So, I mean, and there's been a lot of stories about this. So here's what this is. This is just Kash Patel having learned well from his boss. That's all it is. This is a PR stunt. That's what this lawsuit is. That's what most of Trump's lawsuits are. Well, Trump, it's a little different. They're PR stunts, and for Trump, they're PR stunts and or shakedowns. They're part of an extortion scheme. Kash Patel's not really in that position nearly as much as Donald Trump is. Now, I guess the head of the FBI can make some threats, but I don't see it working, him being able to pull it off, certainly not the way Trump can. So with Kash Patel, this is pure publicity. It's public relations. So, you know, and that's what Trump does. When something true is published that's really damaging to you, how do you prove? How do you make people believe that it's not true? Well, you file a defamation lawsuit. That shows that you're really serious, that this is really a lie. If it wasn't a lie, why would I file a lawsuit? Well, because this is all PR. That's why you're filing the lawsuit. And so what's going to happen here is that eventually this will be thrown out of court at summary judgment, or Kash Patel will just dismiss it. Probably he'll just dismiss it at some point. It's already served his purpose. And the purpose was, as I said, PR. It's to demonstrate to MAGAs that it's not true. I'm not a drunk. I show up to work. Of course, we have so much reporting and so much evidence that, yeah, you are a drunk, and yeah, you do miss a significant amount of work. There's lots of reporting on that, not just this Atlantic article. But I think part of this is the fact that there's also been reports that Kash Patel may be next on the chopping block. And that's been out there for a few months now, that Trump is considering firing Kash Patel. We'll see. But it's certainly, this is a PR stunt. So what'll happen in terms of the legal part of this? Oh, I got an itch going on here. Is Kash Patel, just like Trump, he's never going to sit for depositions on this stuff. He's never going to go through discovery. So since these civil lawsuits take so long, by the time they get to discovery, it'll be so many months from now. Nobody's going to be talking about this lawsuit anymore. Now, nobody's really talking about it now, honestly. That he'll just dismiss it. He'll just dismiss it before he has to go through discovery. Or at best, he goes through discovery, and then the Atlantic, the defense here will file a motion for summary judgment, and they'll win. And Kash Patel's case will be thrown out. So basically what summary judgment is, for those that you don't understand, in a civil lawsuit, you go through the discovery process. Each side gets to find out all this information relevant to the case. And then before it proceeds to trial, oftentimes a side or both sides will move for summary judgments, asking the court to decide the case just on the basis of what they've discovered in discovery. And what the argument is at summary judgment is the evidence that we've uncovered is so overwhelmingly in our favor that there's no need for a jury trial. It would just waste the jury's time. That the evidence is so clear that there's no need for a, because what does a jury do? The jury is the fact finder. What they're saying here is that the facts are so clear that we don't really need to get a jury involved. The judge could just decide this on our motions and on the evidence we've discovered during discovery. And that's almost certainly what would happen here. If Kash Patel doesn't dismiss it on his own, it'll get thrown out at summary judgment. And that's what would happen with almost all of Trump's frivolous lawsuits too. The reason he wins these lawsuits, he's never won one of these lawsuits at trial. He never wins at trial. They never even go to trial or any of these defamation lawsuits. When he wins them in a settlement. He doesn't actually win it. The other side just settles because they're bribes. They're either outright bribes or they're just like, oh, let's just settle it. We don't need this hassle. We don't need him to continue attacking us. Let's just settle the lawsuit. But if they ever fought these things, this is what would happen. Trump would either dismiss these things before they get to discovery, especially things having to do with allegations of Trump being a sexual abuser. Like, for example, the Wall Street Journal. The judge just threw out Trump's case there because he didn't even state a case in the pleadings. That case was so bad, it didn't even get to discovery. It didn't even get to summary judgment. The judge just dismissed it. And this was the lawsuit over the Washington Post publishing that birthday card or whatever letter that Trump sent to his best friend Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. The Epstein estate released it, or I guess released it to the Washington Post or let them see it or something. And it was some weird ass shit that Trump wrote with a drawing. It was outlined the outline of a naked woman with Trump's scribbly signature right where the pubic area would be. Anyway, it was reporting on that Trump sued about. Anyone else's allergies heating up? They're getting me good here. Anyway, the court just threw that out. Again, not on summary judgment, no discovery. The judge threw it out just on the basis of the pleadings. The judge said, just reading your lawsuit, you don't even state a valid claim for which relief could be granted. And so he just threw it out. And he gave them some time for them to file an amended petition. I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but it's probably going to be met with the same result. And even if it's not, even if they put some bullshit in there to at least survive the initial reading by the judge, it's never going to get to discovery because Donald Trump's not going to sit for this and be questioned about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and about this letter he sent to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. Yeah, it's never going to happen. So that's a perfect example of a case that would never even get to the discovery phase, much less summary judgment or trial. Okay, so we got that. Kash Patel desperately... Oh, by the way, it's not in this article, but I was reading something else about Kash Patel. He made a statement sometime in the last few days that there's arrests coming related to the 2020 election, or as they claim it, the stolen election in 2020, and that there's arrests coming. Now, what one would assume or be led to assume based on what he said is that people are going to be arrested and prosecuted for election fraud or whatever their part it was in stealing the 2020 election. Well, that's bullshit because we are past the statute of limitations for that. Well, first of all, it's bullshit because there was no election fraud. The election wasn't stolen. We all know this. But even if there had been, why didn't Trump order this all investigated on day one? Right? I mean, he's only been talking about it since the day of the election in 2020, right? That's all he's been talking about is a stolen election. Why wasn't that like the first thing he did? His first executive order on Inauguration Day. Appoint a special counsel to investigate the 2020 election. Why didn't he do that? Why are we just now hearing Kash Patel on his own, I guess, conducting an investigation, saying there's arrests going to be made? Why wasn't this the number one priority of Donald Trump? I mean, it's been the number one issue for him. He hasn't been able to shut the fuck up about it since November 2020. You would think that would be the very first thing he did. And if there were actual crimes committed in the 2020 election, he would have still been within the statute of limitations because the statute of limitations at the federal level for most crimes is 5 years. If he did it on day one, he would have still been within the statute of limitations to be able to bring charges if there was any election fraud. But instead, what are we? We're almost a year and a half into this, and just now they're talking about it? Well, guess what, guys? It's been more than 5 years. So even if there was any crimes, you can't bring those charges anymore. It's 2026 now. Your time gone. That election happened in 2020. It's over. So there's not going to be any crimes. But that's again, they constantly shovel shit to the MAGA cult. Now, if there are any arrests, a couple things. If they arrest anyone, even on bullshit charges that are outside the statute of limitations, those are just going to be immediately dismissed. I mean, there's not even going to be an indictment. You can't indict someone for something that's outside the statute of limitations. It's just not going to happen. Maybe the FBI does an illegal arrest on some bogus charges and then dismisses it or whatever. But it's not going anywhere once you're outside the statute of limitations. What maybe they might do is arrest people for subsequent crimes. Maybe they interviewed somebody and then accused them of lying to the FBI if they interviewed them sometime within the statute of limitations, and then charge them with lying to the FBI and say, see, they lied to us as part of the election fraud or whatever. But anyway, it's just more bullshit for the cult. Okay, so that was Kash Patel. No, I already flipped. That's different. Okay. Oh, here's another one. I'm going to have to wrap this up. I will do this hopefully in the next podcast, which hopefully will be tomorrow, but we'll see. I've had a hell of a couple of weeks. I don't want to get all into it, but sorry. I've had a lot of shit going on. Man, I can't get this itch. A lot of shit going on has prevented me from doing as much work as I wanted to on all this stuff. But anyway, I'll get to more of this stuff tomorrow if I can. God only knows what will happen between now and the next podcast. Here's one. This is the New York Times. Trump administration takes steps to refund $166 billion in tariffs. When President Trump unveiled his sprawling global tariffs last spring, he boasted that they would generate windfall profits and make America wealthy again. But after suffering a significant Supreme Court defeat, Mr. Trump is about to pay the money back. By the way, I want to take this opportunity. I get so many people, all the defeatists, the defeatists who say, oh, Trump, we can never convict Trump in the Senate. We'll never get 60. Another thing the defeatists also say is that the Supreme Court will always bail Trump out. They give him whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He never loses at the Supreme Court. Again, despite the fact that that's demonstrably not true. Yes, this has been a horrible court, no doubt. They try to rule in his favor whenever they possibly can. That said, they don't always rule in his favor. They struck down his tariffs. That was his signature issue of his second term. This wasn't just some little loss. That was his signature issue. And they struck it down. And not only did they strike down his tariffs, they took one of his weapons away. Remember, whenever he wanted to bully another country or a company or whatever, he would threaten them with tariffs. He can't do that anymore, or not nearly to the same extent as he used to be able to. This defanged him. This took away so much of his power. The Supreme Court did that. And it's always risky business predicting what the Supreme Court's going to do, but I think they're going to strike down his birthright citizenship case too. They have ruled against him many times. I know, but so the point is, I'm tired of these people, the defeatists, the doom and gloomers. Oh, we can never beat Trump. The court never rules against Trump. Trump gets whatever he wants. Trump's going to cancel the elections. Trump's going to do this. Trump's going to do that. I'm tired of it. You know what it is? It's you keep convincing people of all that bullshit. They're not going to fight. They're going to I don't know understand what the point is of doing that. Are you trying to convince other people that it's a lost cause? There's nothing we can do. Trump is going to win. At some point, if enough people believe that shit, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as someone who desperately wants to beat back this fascist MAGA takeover of this country and wants to see Donald Trump impeached, removed, and prosecuted, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. But you know what? It also definitely won't happen if enough people take that defeatist attitude. So I'm really fucking sick of it. I mean, and I don't understand why there's any of those people out there anymore. How much more losing does Trump have to do before people start realizing he's not fucking infallible? He doesn't get everything he wants. He's a fucking loser. And understand, he is one of the stupidest people on the face of the earth. Why is everyone so fucking scared of this guy? He's an idiot. You know, talking about the redistricting, that's just one perfect example. And I said it at the time when Trump first came out and demanded that Texas redraw their congressional maps to squeeze out like 5 more Republican seats. I said at the time, as soon as it came out, I said, this is going to blow up in this stupid motherfucker's face. He has no idea what he's doing. And why did Republicans do it? Because Republicans don't want to say no to this guy. But I'm telling you, many of them knew it was a bad idea too. Trump thought, probably, I don't know if he still thinks, but he thought at the time when he and his people came up with this idea that because he did well in 2024, if we can just redraw these maps, then we could squeeze more Republican seats out. The problem is they're going to redraw the maps based on the 2024 turnout. Well, in 2026, it's not going to be the same turnout. So what they're going to likely do is dilute some of their safe Republican seats, making it more easy for those to be flipped by Democrats. And now it also, of course, caused Democrats to do the same thing. And so they redistricted. The whole thing's blown up in his fucking face. So at best, after all of that, at best, for Republicans, maybe it nets them a couple of seats. Maybe. It may be a complete wash, and it may be that Trump's brilliant plan is actually going to benefit Democrats more than Republicans. This is what I'm saying. The guy who's in charge of all of this, because nobody in the Republican Party dares say no to him, the guy who's pulling all the strings on the Republican side is a blithering fucking idiot. Why do we fear him? Why? And I remember the panic at the time when Trump first started doing this and Texas voted to redistrict. Everyone, so many people on the left were panicked. Oh no, it's all over. We're never going to win. Can people just stop being so scared of this guy? He's a moron. Understand that. Stop fearing him. Yes, he can do a lot of damage, but don't automatically assume that he's going to be successful in everything that he wants to do. And another thing, another example, the SAVE Act. Oh no, what if they pass the SAVE Act? Fucking sick of that too. First of all, it looks like it's not going to pass. You haven't heard anything about it lately. Doesn't mean they won't pass it, jam it through, change the filibuster rule, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But even if it did, why do people think that means it's automatically going to allow Trump to completely rig the election? It's not. I mean, it's bad. First of all, if it passes, and I don't think it's gonna, and why? Because Republicans refuse to go along. Okay, again, don't tell me Trump gets everything he wants. He can't even get Republicans to pass the SAVE Act. So stop fucking telling me that Trump gets every damn thing that he wants. It's bullshit. It's not fucking true. Not from the Supreme Court, not even from Republicans in Congress. He doesn't get every damn thing he wants. And the other thing is, if the SAVE Act did what people fear that it does, that it will automatically mean that Republicans win the midterms and all future elections, then don't you think Republicans would have passed it? I mean, they're all scared to death of losing their seats. If they could just pass this act, this bill that Trump wants them to pass, and they can all keep their seats, don't you think they would? But they're not doing it. Why? Because it doesn't do what Trump thinks it's going to do. I mean, again, it's bad. And by the way, even if it does pass, which is probably not going to, I doubt it survives a court challenge. Because the Supreme Court has made this is long established precedent. You cannot put impediments in front of people who are seeking to exercise. You can't make it more difficult, burdensome to exercise a fundamental right. Okay, you can't make it, or you can't put laws in place to make it difficult to exercise a fundamental constitutional right. like voting. And what does the SAVE Act do? It's all about making it harder to vote. So it's very unlikely that it would even survive a court challenge. And even if it did, I'll give you one further, even if it did, this is such the changes that this law would impose on the states. First of all, no mail-in ballots would be allowed. There are several states in this country that have universal mail-in ballots. You can only vote by mail. If this law were to pass and upheld by the courts, those states would have to completely redo their entire election system. We're 6 months away from the election. And that's just one way in which this changes this. Basically, what the SAVE Act would do is everyone would be automatically unregistered, and you'd have to re-register in the way that the SAVE Act says you have to re-register to vote. So basically, if this were passed, and it's not even passed yet, and then survived a court challenge, it would then, everyone in the fucking country would have to re-register to vote, and several states would have to completely revamp their entire elections process. This would never pass the courts. And even if it did, they would never allow it to go into effect this year. It's impossible to even comply with the law in time for the midterms. Anyway, so for any number of reasons, as I've tried to explain, people are freaking out unnecessarily about the SAVE Act. But that's what was happening. Oh no, the SAVE Act. I'm thinking, guys, who's demanding the passage of the SAVE Act? Donald Trump. Who is one of the stupidest people on the face of the fucking earth? Donald Trump. Why do you automatically assume that this is going to be some brilliant strategy that's going to work to Donald Trump's benefit? And then on top of that, if all of those things even happen and the SAVE Act was in place, you think it only impacts Democrats? No, it impacts Republicans too. And there is a good reason to believe that the SAVE Act would hurt Republicans more than Democrats. Lots of reasons to believe that. Chief among them is this. Again, what is the main purpose of the SAVE Act? To make it more difficult to vote. You got to jump through all these hoops. It's a pain in the ass, right? So to go through all that crap as a voter, you have to be really motivated to vote. Would you agree? The harder it is to vote, the more motivated you're going to have to be to go through all that crap, right? Well, according to every fucking poll on this subject, which side is far more motivated to vote in these midterm elections? Democrats. All the polls show this, are far more motivated to vote in the midterms than Republicans. So if Trump got his way and it suddenly became more difficult to vote and Democrats are more motivated to vote, I'm telling you, Democrats would crawl over broken fucking glass to vote. There's nothing stopping Democrats from getting to the polls. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that support. You're not stopping Democrats from going to the polls. But if you're a Republican who's disillusioned, you voted for Trump because of no more wars, you voted for him for whatever, you listen to Tucker Carlson all the time, and now he's attacking Tucker Carlson and calling everyone in Tucker Carlson's audience an idiot. Same with Alex Jones, same with Megyn Kelly. He's constantly attacking you. He's constantly betraying campaign promises. You're not going to crawl over broken glass for this guy. Even if you still kind of support him, you're going to be, Republicans are much more likely to be like, I'm not going through all that shit. So I'm telling you, even if the SAVE Act passed, it would just like so much else, it would blow up in Trump's face. He's an idiot. Stop fearing him. Stop thinking he's fucking invincible. He's not. He's the dumbest motherfucker walking around on two legs, and he can barely do that anymore. So stop fearing him, for God's sakes. We're approaching the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and we're surrounded in this country by fucking pussies, and I'm sick of it. We got idiots and fascists on the Republican side, and then we got so many Democratic voters running around scared of their own fucking shadows, giving up in advance. Oh no, there's nothing we can do. Is this how you save a fucking country? The signers of the Declaration of Independence, you know what they did? They signed their own fucking death warrant when they signed that, when they signed the Declaration of Independence. If they had lost that war Every member who signed the Declaration of Independence would have been hanged at the bare minimum for treason. Every damn one of them. Hey, thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. Every one of them. And they knew it. They knew that they were just signing for the world, stating for the world that they are traitors to the crown. They, at that point, either had to win the war or they were going to be executed. Every one of them knew it. John Hancock wrote his signature all big. He said, I just want to make sure you know this is me. Come get me, motherfucker. That's what they were willing to do 250 years ago. And yet I got to see people in my comments section, the SAVE Act. Fucking had it. I fucking hate cowards and quitters. All right. End of rant. And you know what? I think that's probably a good place to stop. Again, I got a lot. Oh, you know what? I was talking about the tariff thing. You know what? We'll pick up with the tariff thing. Next podcast, we'll continue with the tariff thing. Okay? This is a good place to start. Guys, thank you so much for watching this. I really do appreciate it. And for all of those of you who support this channel, I really appreciate it. And all of my channels. It means a lot. I'm 100% independent. I don't have anybody to help me. As you could probably tell with some of my technical deficiencies, I probably should have a few people to help me, but I don't. Oh, also, I didn't talk about my buddy here. We'll talk about that later. He's missing. So we got some stuff to talk about. So please join me next time. And again, thanks for watching. Be well, and I'll talk to you again soon.